Lazarus, come forth.
Hello. You guys doing all right? Yes, very good, very good. In case you just update, we have the new asking a few weeks ago about it. We needed a new computer and a new screen. We got all of it's in. The new computer is up and running, but you want to bring things in one piece at a time. So this is the old TV that's now working because we have a computer that works. And next few weeks we're bringing in the even better screen. So looking forward to that as well. Okay, and arm's doing great. Surgery 3 weeks ago, progressing nicely. Thank you. Some of you want updates. That's the update. It's getting better. All of us have happy places where we like to go, and when I'm teaching, it's one of my happy places. You can tell Steve's in his happy place right now. He's doing what he loves to do, but all of us have those happy places. Some people are hunters, and October to December, that's a happy place because there's a lot of tree stand work that's happening in that area. And some of you, Christmas is a real happy place because you're going to get all your family into one space, and they're going to all be together, and that's going to be a happy place for you. Now there's some of you who are going to get all your family in one space, and it's not going to be a happy place, but we'll go with the happy place for right now. For some of you, when you work out, that's a happy place. Some of you in the kitchen, you're cooking, it's a happy place. There's places that we get where we are content, feel very good and stable, happy places. And all of us have a few of those. I'm afraid a lot of us found a spare one during the past couple years. I don't know if you noticed there was a thing going on in this past couple years. And a lot of us found happy places in the not doing a whole lot phase. I didn't discover the joy of stretchy pants till I got this thing, because I wore jeans the whole pandemic. This thing, we had to get a stretchy pants. I see this. I see that now. See the value there. So everybody's got those, and sometimes we're stuck in them, sometimes we're just doing okay in them. I've also noticed that when it comes to Christians, most of us have happy places. We have happy spaces within the faith. There are certain parts of Christianity that if you've been a Christian for a while, you've kind of worked into, and this is your happy space. Like some of you, teaching, learning is your happy space. You can tell that it might be one of your happy spaces if, you have your blanks ready. You got your pen clicked already to fill in the blanks of the teaching guide, and you're ready to go. And if I miss a blank, there will be very nasty looks and possibly an email. I mean, it's coming because you need that. And if I just say, oh, the Greek word for that is, you go and lean in. See, those are the teachers. If you're online, you actually download the thing, and you're following along with the notes, and it's the teachers. But there's other people, and your happy space is doing stuff. And so you're busy doing things and creating order, or maintaining order, either creating or maintaining order. And last week, I get to see that every time we do the difference between those two. Every time we do something like last week, we were doing the Operation Christmas Hope, and everybody was bringing their stuff in. And as I'm preaching, I'm looking, and I've got my teaching people, and they're down there with their notes. And I've got my doing people, and they're in the back making sure all the presents are ready. If they get them all ready, they might come in and listen to me a little bit. But right now, they got important things to do because things got to get organized. And then some of you, some of the Christians are worship Christians. And I'm the part that comes after the good part. Because you're here for the music and you're swaying and singing, little drummer boy. Little drummer boy, little drummer boy. But everybody, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, some of you, there's lots of places. You're working with kids, there's lots of places that Christians find their happy places. And when we're going through John chapter 11, and in John chapter 11, we've got the people that are in it. A lot of them, when the chapter starts, are in their happy place. The disciples, when the chapter starts, are in a very happy place. Now, you have to understand how you became a disciple and why you'd become a disciple to understand that. Because Jesus has his 12 closest followers, and the way they became that was Jesus, the rabbi, the young radical rabbi, but still the rabbi, said, "Follow me." And what that meant was, if you want to follow a teacher around learning for the next few years, in their culture, normally, so you can then become a rabbi yourself, you followed a rabbi. And so you walked around with the rabbi, and the point wasn't you're going to take over the world. They had to learn that part later. The part was you're going to learn. And so you're going to go to walk through a landscape, and he's going to teach you. And you're going to be teaching and learning and learning and learning. In Jesus' case, his disciples got an extra bonus because there were miracles, which most rabbis didn't offer. So that was like a high level of rabbi. But they were learners. And when the chapter starts, they're away from the hubbub of Jerusalem, the big city. They've been to the big city recently, Jerusalem. They tried to kill Jesus, so they moved far away from Jerusalem. So they're in the country, in a passive place, and they are learning, and they are in their happy places. Now, one of the other people in the story is Mary. And Mary was kind of like the disciples. And Mary, my slides are off a little bit, sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. And every time you see Mary, you're going to see her sitting at the Lord's feet. She was also the note taker. She was the learner. Okay, Jesus, just teach me. Come on, fire away. And so she's in her happy place when she's learning too. And then you come to Martha. And Martha's happy place wasn't teaching. Martha's happy place was doing. It says earlier in another chapter, as Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. And it says that Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. Martha was going to create order out of, here comes the teacher and all the rabbis, all his disciples, and all the people, the crowd, and they're all in her house. But she is going to create order in this situation. And in reality, she was distracted and upset, but she was also, this is where she liked to be. If you'd have told her, Martha, we've hired help. You guys know a person like this. Some of you are a person like this. If you came to him and said, we've hired help. You get to just sit at the teacher's feet the entire day. The help's going to take care of everything in the kitchen. What are they going to do? They're going to be in the kitchen supervising. Right? Because that's their happy place. That's where they want to be. So everybody's in their happy place, and then Jesus. And we start out with Lazarus being sick, and word gets to Jesus that Lazarus is sick, and the complicating factor is that Jesus is crazy big fans and friends with Mary and Martha and Lazarus. They have been through a lot together. Like I said, there's a book out right now that calls their house Jesus' favorite place on earth. He loved to go spend time with them. Suddenly he's sick. And the word gets to the disciples. He said to his disciples, let's go back to Judea. One of the disciples raised his hand. Judea, that's where Jerusalem is, right? Yes. Remember what happened last time we were in Jerusalem? Yeah, there was that whole stoning thing. Yeah, I thought we were going to try to avoid that. I thought that was not really on the agenda because we were just going to avoid stoning in all its very forms. But Rabbi, they said, a short while ago, the Jews there tried to stone you, and yet you're going back. So the disciples are immediately ripped out of their happy place. And then Jesus gets to Bethany. He has a conversation with Martha, and then he goes to, and Mary comes to see him. And look at this. Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him. She fell at his feet. Fell at his feet. That's her place to stay, to be taught. Now, I know there were lots of complicated emotions, and she was probably angry and sad, but she took her student position. She took the teach me position. And she said, Lord, if you'd been here, my brother would not have died. And what's she wanting? Explain this to me. Teach me why this happened. And the odd part is, she's at his feet. She says, Lord, if you'd been here, my brother would not have died. And now she's waiting for the answer. She's got her blanks ready to fill them in. And Jesus turns to the other people and said, where do they put the body? And he walks away. And best I can tell, he leaves her sitting there. And so she's grasping to learn, and he's saying, no, not for that, not right now. And then to get to our text for the day, Jesus says he was deeply moved, which means angry, we saw last week, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance, and he said, "Take away the stone." But Lord, Martha said, Martha likes order. By this time, there's a bad odor, for he's been in there 4 days. Jesus, I have spent the last 4 days creating order here. I have taken the chaos of my brother's sickness and his death, and I have ordered it. And now he has been in the tomb for 4 days. As soon as he died, we put him in the tomb just like you're supposed to. Everything is under control, Jesus. And when you open the tomb, it will stop being under control, Jesus. And he has ripped all of them out of their happy place. And then he says something really crucial. Then Jesus said, "Did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?" He's talking to Martha. Martha said, "He stinks." If you like King James, he says, "He stinketh." And Jesus said, "Did I not tell you if you believe, you'll see the glory of God?" Believe. Two key words in that verse. Believe. Believe means trust. It's really weird because in Greek, there's only the one word. It means believe and trust, noun and verb. We have a different word for the noun and the verb, so we say believe and trust, but they're the same. To believe means to trust. Jesus is saying, if you trust me, you will see the glory of God. Now, what's the glory of God? The glory of God is anytime God reveals himself to us. Because anytime God reveals himself to us, he is so awesome and so wonderful and so spectacular that when you see him, you are drawn to him. If you have a picture of a God you're not drawn to, that's not the right God. Okay? So God reveals it. So if you trust me, I will reveal myself to you and you will be drawn to me. That's been the theme of the entire chapter. But here's the point. If I can get to right. God moves us out of our happy places for his glory and our growth. See, another word for a happy place can be rut. And this entire chapter, Jesus has been telling them, I am going to take you someplace different so you can grow. We start out in chapter 11, verse 4 starts out with it. It says, when he heard this, Jesus said, he says, this sickness will not end in death. It's going to have a detour into death. It's not going to end there. No, it's for God's glory so that God's Son may be glorified through it. And then in verse 14 and 15, it says that he told him plainly, Lazarus is dead, and for your sake I'm glad I was not there, so you may believe. But let's go to him. So I am going to take you out of your happy places. I am going to reveal God to you, and you are going to believe at a greater level because of what we do. And we don't like that, but it's real and it's true and it's necessary. See, God calls us to places that require obedience, introspection, and trust. We have a really bad habit of locking in, but when you lock in, you can't learn. Imagine if somebody went to school, and from first grade through college, all they took was math. Math classes, nothing but math classes the whole way through. When they got done, how would they be at math? Spectacular, awesome, they'd be great at math. How would they be at history? Civil War, what's a Civil War? And also, what's a verb? And so we lock in. We're students. We're learning, and we don't see the angle that's necessary for worship. We don't see the angle that only learned through service. We don't see the other angles that are part of that. So God calls us to places requiring obedience, introspection, and trust. And the reality is you can either go to those places willingly or God will drag you there. Because God is committed to you becoming the person he created you to be. Book of Philippians, Paul says, he who has begun a good work in you will complete it. He is going to do it. Are you going to be a cooperator, or are you going to be an opposition person? Well, on a regular basis, a few times a week, this is one of my prayers for myself. It's from the Psalms. It says, search me, God, know my heart. Test me, know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. God, show me where I need to come out of my comfort zone. Show me the perspectives I need to have, because I would much rather choose to step out of my happy place than have you drag me out. Because when you drag me out, it tends to be a very painful, unhappy experience for me. That doesn't mean I still don't get pulled out of my happy place for other reasons. It doesn't mean bad things don't happen. But I figure if I'm asking, it won't happen as often. That I'll get a short circuit on some of the times when I really need to learn something. Maybe he'll teach me without putting me through some of the stuff that I've had to go through to learn. And so we have to come out of, if you are in a comfortable place all the time, God cannot teach you certain things because you only see from one angle. Okay? Matter of fact, let me give you this. This is 2 points in 1 point. Just this is a bonus special extra value point. First part, God uses unfulfilled expectation as teachable moments. First part, unfulfilled expectation. See, here's the thing. I'm a pretty good Christian. A lot of you say the same thing, if you're honest about it. I mean, if you're in a Bible study and they say you're a pretty good Christian, you're going to say, "Oh no, I have so far to go, Brother Steve. I'm just struggling along like everybody else." But deep down, I'm doing not bad. I mean, there are better Christians than me, but on the scale of me to Hitler, I'm doing really well. On the scale of me to a lot of people I know, I'm in the upper percentiles. I'm doing all right. And I'm sure Mary and Martha thought that too. They thought, man, when it comes to people God likes, Jesus comes to our house. Can you imagine if Jesus just dropped by your house once in a while? If he just showed up at the door every few months? And he was comfortable, we talked about this before, that he was so comfortable in their house that if you put it in modern terms, he would come in, put his feet up on the table, he'd get something out of the fridge, because Jesus was comfortable there. He was fully comfortable in their place, and I'm sure they thought, we're doing pretty good. So when we have a need, what's going to happen? If our brother's sick and we ask God to answer that prayer, what's going to happen? Well, I know what's not going to happen. He's not going to die. I don't know exactly what God's going to do, but my brother's not going to die of sickness as long as the miracle-working Savior likes to hang out at our house. And Lazarus died. And we can get to that point where we think, well, I am doing things right, therefore bad stuff shouldn't happen to me. But the rain falls on the just and on the unjust. We all have bad things happen to us. And those are going to happen. That's unfulfilled expectations where we think God should do it a certain way. Anybody else have a plan for God? We say God's got a plan for us. I frequently have a plan for God. You ever go to God with how this is going to work out? I've got like contracts, here it is. God, if you would just initial here, 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 and here, and then sign it here, and date it, that would be good, because everything's laid out. It's all done. Anybody else do that? Yeah. And then God goes, yeah, not feeling it at all. And sends us a totally different way. And so we have those unfulfilled expectations. That's a lot of times when God takes us out of our comfort zone, out of our happy place. It's because we had an expectation, and he chose not to live into our expectation. And that comes out as a teachable moment. The reason I say that is the problem with talking a lot is you say something to somebody else, and then God wants you to apply it in your life. That's just crazy stuff right there, but it happens. Like I'm talking on the phone, this guy called, he'd had something go wrong, and he was wanting to understand it. And so I called him, and we're talking, and he's like, what kind of sign is this? Is this a sign I should stop doing this thing, or is it a sign that I should just double down? He was sure it was a sign of some kind. But most of the time when stuff happens in our lives, God didn't make it happen, God let it happen. Like, God didn't kill Lazarus. There wasn't a lightning bolt that took him out. Lazarus got a perfectly normal, natural disease, and he died from it. God didn't cause it, but God allowed it. And most of the time when bad stuff happens, God's not causing, God's allowing. So he moves us out of our comfort zone, but he does it by allowing things in our lives. And he was saying, this man I was talking to said, what's the sign? I said, most of the time it's not a sign. It's hardly ever a sign. It's usually just a teachable moment. You know, you're with your kids, you see something on TV, you see something in the driving past it and say, kids, pay attention to this. Like Pastor Barry has one he has with his kids. If they're driving down the road and there's one of those things where all the guys have gotten out of the bus in the orange suits and they're cleaning up alongside the road, you know, he'll go, they made bad decisions. Tell his daughters, okay. And he's quit, by the way. Barry's improving. He no longer rolls his window down and yells that to the people very often. But it's and that's what you do as a parent. You're always looking for those teachers. Well, most of the time when the bad stuff happens and we don't get our expectations fulfilled, it's not a sign, it's just a teachable moment. And like I said, you tell that to somebody, and that's a good point. I like that a lot. I told it to Barry. We put in our book of things to tell people. And then, of course, crud. So I told you last week, if you were here, if you were watching or here, whatever that. It seems like God's moving me toward a PhD. And as I told you guys already, if it happens, okay, I don't care. You can call me Dr. Steve or Dr. Davis. I don't care. Or Pastor Dr. Steve, or whatever you're comfortable with. But everything's going really smooth, and then I'm supposed to take the GRE, which is the graduate record exam, which you have to have taken. You have to have the paperwork has to be in. They have to have it by January 15th. It takes 3 or 4 weeks for them to get it, so I have to take it at least a month in advance. I've got everything scheduled, so I've got a couple months to get it all taken care of, and then the day I'm supposed to have it, surgery. So we push it off 2 weeks. I go in the next time and do one of the dumbest things ever done in my life, which is I get bored during a break. I pick up my cell phone to check my messages, which disqualifies me from the test, have to retake it. And of course, they hit the busy season because everybody's deadline is January 15th, and you cannot talk to a human there. I don't know if there's any humans left. I literally held on Thursday. I was on hold for 2.5 hours and never got to human. My phone would just give up at some point. I'm sorry. Been playing this music over and over. My phone, something got tired of the music, whatever. So I'm starting to go. So what am I saying? God, is this a sign? Is this a sign? Is this some kind of sign, God? And so I send a message to the school, and I say, okay, I'm really going to have this January 15th deadline is going to be tight because they won't let you take the test. You have to wait 3 weeks to take the test the next time. I took the test on December 3rd. Anyone do that math? 3 plus 21 is 24. Seemed like I got something scheduled on December 24th. Seemed like I'm busy that day. And the next day I think is busy, and there's a lot of busy right in there, and I don't know how I'm going to pull this off, so I send them an email about it, looking for a sign. And the sort of the head of the process messaged me back the next day. She goes, we're starting a sort of a beta test on a new experimental project on making all these dates kind of flexible. Would you be interested in the beta test? And I said, let me pray about it, yes. And it was like, okay, the question isn't, is this a sign? The question isn't, am I going to trust God through it? Are you going to trust me in the middle of this? Is what God's always wanting. And that's the teachable moment. Are you going to trust me when things aren't going the way you want them to go? Okay, so now let's reset a second. Let's get back to this field and the tomb. There's a tomb. It's a cave. They have a stone. They roll in front of the cave. Let me give you the background just so you have it, how they did this. They buried same day because good idea in the Middle East, okay? So they would, as soon as the person was passed away, they would take a long sheet, twice the person's height, and they would lay him on the sheet and fold it over lengthwise. They'd take another, a small, they'd almost call it a napkin, and they put it over the person's face. We'll explain why later. And then they sort of tie up their arms and legs so they They'd stay in a form. And then they'd immediately throw them in the tomb, and they'd throw lots of good smelly things in there with the intention of it not being that bad. It got that bad anyway, but at least for the day or two while they're still going in and out and fixing things, it wouldn't be as bad. Now, what would happen is they roll the stone back over it and wait a year. I'm not making this up. In a year, they would go back in, year-ish, go back in, and of course the body is completely decomposed. All you have is a skeleton. And they would take the bones and put those in a box called an ossuary. Those of you in the teaching group, you can write that down, ossuary. You learned your new fancy word for the day. And take the box and put it on a shelf in the cave. So they could bury entire families in this one cave, because by the end of each year, it was down to just one box per person. They found them with people's names on them, all kinds of things. And so that was the strategy. And Jesus is messing up the strategy because now it's been 4 days. And he walks up and says, take away the stone. So they took away the stone. And remember, separate yourself out. We know what's going to happen. At that moment, only one person on the scene knew what was going to happen, Jesus. Everybody else was going, what is he up to? Why does he want the stone rolled away? Does he want to go in and check the body out himself? What's going on? Then Jesus looked up and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. That word heard is going to be important in just a minute. Okay? I know that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here so that they may, there's that word again, believe, trust me that you sent me. When he said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. And there's a pause where nothing happens, because they wrapped Lazarus this way and they tied his arms and they tied his legs so he can't sprint. All he can do is shuffle, and there's silence. And then there starts to be a little bit of, they hear scraping in the tomb as he shuffles his way off the platform and sits up. And they hear him shuffle toward the door. And then they see him, and the dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. And Jesus said to them, take off the grave clothes and let him go. I would love to see that. Would you love to see that? This is one of those ones I'd love to go back in time and watch that one, because that would be so cool. I know the ending already, but I'd still love to go watch that movie. You know what I'm saying? I'd love to see that. And I want you to make sure you get a little bit of that power to see just how spectacular an event this was. 4 days dead. See, it's just incredible. But let's go back to practical. Let's talk and bring it to us a little bit, because let's just say that there's probably somebody here, who's currently not in your favorite happy place. There's an expectation that God hasn't met in your life. Or things are just going really bad right now. You were cruising, everything was going really well, and suddenly, curveball. We said that's God's favorite pitch is a curveball. And it's come into your life, and everything's messed up, and you're going out of control, and you feel like, now I have to help the Southerners out with this one, because some of you are from the South. You've always lived in the South. When I say ice, you say maker, right? You say, that's ice. Oh yeah, I take the cup, I put it in the fridge, it produces ice, I pour my Mountain Dew over top of it. Got it, love ice. Now if you're in the North, you have a different definition of ice. If I say ice, you say storm, and you picture a parking lot or a road, and it's this thick, and you're saying, I'm supposed to get there via car or walking or whatever. It is not fun. That's the goal. And you go out on the ice and you feel really chaotic. And the point you need to get from this whole thing, I think one of them is, when we feel out of control, God's still in control. You kind of know that, but you need to be reminded on a regular basis, because we forget. When you feel out of control, God's still in control. And the picture that I would use for that, I like to picture walking with a 3-year-old. Walking with a 3-year-old is always fun. And let's say we're always the 3-year-old in my illustration, and God's always the grown-up. And if you're the 3-year-old, you're all wrapped got stuff around your head. If you fall down, you can't get back up, right? You're just going to lay there and turtle for a while. And you're trying to get across the icy place, and you don't know how to do it, and your boots are slick, and you're just going. And then parent, bam, holds the arm, not the hand, the wrist, But any newbies here, you never hold a 3-year-old's hand, you always hold their wrist so you can control them. And then the parent who knows how to walk on ice and has really good boots just escorts you across. And you'll never feel control. You're the 3-year-old. You're still going, woof, your feet are still going like this. But every time you start to fall down, you're the 3-year-old. God's the one that's got you by the hand. When you feel out of control, God's still in control. He's always in control. Let me show you how much He's in control. The Bible says, as a matter of fact, Jesus had just told Martha just a few verses earlier, I am the resurrection and the life. He said that. I am the resurrection. Not I produce resurrection, I am resurrection. There will come a time in the future when Jesus will step out and He will call, and all the dead in Christ will rise. Every one of us. If we die before He comes back, we're all going to die, to rise from the dead. He's going to raise everybody by saying it. He comes up to the grave. Remember what He said when He came up to the grave? Lazarus, come out. Do you know why He said Lazarus, come out? Because if you're the resurrection and you walk up to a graveyard and say, come out, what's going to happen? You better be specific. Thankfully he learned that lesson ahead of time, or that would have been a mess. All right? But He is in control. He is totally in control. And the thing I want you to get about how control He is, let me get the point right. Jesus had way more power than was necessary to raise Lazarus. This was not hard for Him. Jesus didn't go, well, this is going to be a tough miracle. I better get some rest. I'm going to have to really work on this one. This is going to be hard. He has the power to call everybody at once. He has to put the name on it just to make sure it's just the guy He's aiming for. He's got to target it. It's got to be a targeted call for it. But Jesus also has way more power than is necessary for whatever problem you face right now. The things that got you going like this, the things that got you totally out of control, the thing that's got you completely messed up, do you know how hard it would be for God to just step in and solve it? No sweat. I mean, just remember, once in a while you have to remind yourself that God called the universe out into existence by His voice. He just said, let there be light. And there was light. I can't even make my Alexa turn on my lights right. I'm telling you, I call mine Ziggy. Ziggy, lights. Ziggy. Pause. Lights. I can't even pull that off. God creates light with a voice, with a statement. He calls forth the dead with a voice, with a statement. I can't call my dogs with a voice, with a statement. Whatever you're going through, God's much, much bigger than your problem. In Isaiah, the prophet puts it this way, talking for God. Was my arm too short to deliver you? Do I lack the strength to rescue you? By a mere rebuke I dry up the sea. I turn rivers into a desert. If you're in a problem right now, God is fully aware of it and is choosing to allow you to stay in it. Why would He do that? For His glory and your growth. I mean, I don't know exactly how He wants you to grow. I don't know exactly how He's going to glorify Himself. I just know that's what He does. Because He has the ability to pull you out of it right now, has chosen not to, for His glory and your growth. Okay, I got one more point. And this is going to take a minute, because I got to work my way to it, because there's a couple things that get said that are just crucial, and I got to make sure that we all get it. We're going to work our way to this final thought. It starts with good "O Martha." "Take away the stone," Jesus said. "But Lord," said Martha, the sister of the dead man, remember what she said? "By this time there's a bad odor, for he's been in there 4 days." He's been in there 4 days. He stinketh. I love that. He's been in there 4 days. By this point, there's a stench. Now, let's backtrack a couple things. First off, Jesus has done other resurrections prior to this one. Best I can remember, he's done 2 prior to this. One of them was a guy named Jairus, had a daughter. His daughter is very sick. They send for Jesus. Jesus is on his way to heal her, and before he can get there, she dies. And when Jesus gets there, he raises her from the dead. The other is a widow. Her son dies, the one who's taking care of her, and they're carrying him to the grave, and Jesus intercepts the funeral procession and raises her son from the dead. Now, they buried everybody on the same day they died, so both of these people had only been dead less than 24 hours. Okay? That's important. Remember the sheet that covers the face, just that one. See, they believed that the spirit left the body after the 3rd day. And it wasn't a random thing. It wasn't just, let's see, 3 is a good number. It wasn't that. They were familiar with dead bodies. We're not familiar with dead bodies. They were familiar with dead bodies. And in that climate, not that much happens the first day. The second day it gets worse. The 3rd day, the face turns black. Just starts hollowing out and turns black. And what they decided was that the spirit hung around and every day would come back and check. And the spirit would come back day 1 and the body still looked pretty good and the face was still fine. And they come back day 2 and it's not terrible. Come back day 3 and the face had shrunk and was dark colored, and the spirit would say that person's not coming back and would leave. That's why they put the sheet over the face. That's why they put a napkin. They even did it with Jesus. If you look in the resurrection accounts, there's a big sheet that they fold up, and then there's the little, they call it a napkin, which is just to cover the face, so that if they went into the tomb to fix something during the time, they wouldn't see how bad the face had gotten, because that was pretty distressing. So Lazarus has been in there 4 days, and Martha said, by this time, he stinks. Another verse I need you to see. In 1 Corinthians 15, Paul's talking to the church in Corinth. And he says, in fact, Christ has been raised from the dead, the first fruits of those who have fallen asleep. And one of the things that tells us is that Jesus was the first person to get a glorified body. Okay, remember the little girl, Jairus' daughter, that was raised? She was raised instantly. Remember the widow's son, raised basically immediately. Jesus was raised 3 days later, but he got a glorified body. The angels didn't roll the stone away from Jesus' tomb so Jesus could get out. They rolled it so we could get in and check. Because Jesus, with his glorified body, could just transport himself places. He would just show up in rooms. He had the special glorified body. So it skipped over all the decomposition, skipped over everything. But he had to be the first. He couldn't be the second. So Lazarus has to get a normal, plain old, run-of-your-mill resurrection. And there's a problem. He's been in the tomb for 4 days. And then Jesus said something very interesting. So they took away the stone. And then Jesus looked up and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. Not, I thank you that you always hear me. Because that would be a true prayer, right? I thank you that you're always listening, that every time I pray, you listen and you answer. I thank you for the fact that you always hear me. Not, I thank you that you're going to hear me. Because he hasn't called Lazarus out yet. He hasn't asked for Lazarus to rise from the dead. He hasn't called for that. He hasn't asked for resurrection yet. So it's not, I thank you that you're going to hear me. He said, I thank you that you have heard me. Now, what just happened? They come up to the tomb. Let's read it, work it through. They come up to the tomb. Jesus says, roll away the stone. Martha says, don't, because at this time he stinks. When we open that tomb, 4 days in this Middle Eastern heat, what's going to come out of that tomb is not a risen person. It's going to be a stench that's going to make our eyes water. Because we put the spices in there, and the spices work for a day or two. They don't work for 4 days, Jesus. By the fourth day, it is overpowering. The odor that's going to come out of that tomb is absolutely overpowering. And they rolled away the stone, and Martha took a breath. And this is a little bit speculation, and almost passed out because she smelled spices. All she smelled was what they put on the body to keep it from stinking. She didn't smell stench. And Jesus smelled that. And he said, thank you that you have heard me. See, Jesus needed a body that was in same-day shape to raise it that way. Otherwise, it would be a really complicated miracle. The only way he can simply say, Lazarus, come forth, is if Lazarus can come forth. If Lazarus has been gone 4 days, he can't come forth until there's a lot more repairs made. Till you get organs that have a possibility of function. And what the best I can figure on this one, from the moment Jesus knew Lazarus was dead, he started praying, Father, do not let him decay. Father, maintain that body. Father, keep him whole. Don't let the face turn dark. Don't let the organs do what keep the body whole. And they rolled away the stone, and Jesus caught the aroma of the spices without any of the smell of death. And he said, thank you, Father, that you heard me. Thank you that you were listening these whole past few days, and you've answered my prayer. And then he could say, Lazarus, come forth. And here's how this applies to you and me. See, God is working before we know he needs to. You're in the middle of a problem. How surprised was God by your problem? Not at all. Before your problem starts, before you even know there's a problem coming, God is already aware and working. You may feel out of control, but God's been in control the whole time. Jesus has been praying that there won't be a stench, that the body won't decay for 4 days before he rolls away the stone. And you may be in the middle of a situation and you're going, I'm out of control. God has never been out of control, and God has been preparing for your problem before you even knew a problem was coming. So what should I do in response? Wait a second. What was the point of the chapter? That I might trust him. And so he lets me get moved out of my comfort zone. I move away from my happy place. I go somewhere that's actually painful, from a place of potential really nice stuff, and I'm in this zone, and sometimes I forget that God's still in control, but then I almost always forget, that not only is God in control, God's been in control from before I knew it was going to be a problem. God's been working from before I knew it was going to be a problem. You're in the middle of this problem, or this problem is just starting, and you're looking at the beginning of a problem, and it's huge and overpowering, and it's terrifying, and God's been working from before you saw it. And so we only have, when we come into these problems, it's not about signs. It's about the Savior. Are we going to choose to trust him in the middle of the problem? It's hard. It's tough. I'm not saying you come into a problem and it's really easy to trust. It's not. How'd that last verse say? He said, did I not tell you that if you believe, you'll see the glory of God? If you get into the middle of this problem and you just trust me, you don't doubt me, you don't try to come up with alternate plans so you can fix it yourself. If you trust me to get you through this problem, you'll see my glory. In Corinthians, Paul says, and we are looking at Jesus and being transformed from glory to glory as we gaze at his glory. We are being transformed into his image as we see his glory. And so we see his image, and we're transformed into his glory if we trust. And I don't know what you're going through. And some of you guys are going through a lot tougher stuff than having your GRE test stopped. But all the problems are the same size to God. The one who's going to raise everybody can raise one. He's bigger than your problem. The question is, are you going to trust him in the middle of it? Well, that's what he's asking you to do. Do you trust me? Hebrews says, without faith it's impossible to please God. And what's the word faith mean? Trust. Do you trust me? That's what God's asking. Whatever you're going through, that's the question. Do you trust me? That's, by the way, the start of a relationship with Christ. That's what God says to begin with. Do you trust me? You've been trying to get to God. You've been trying to get to me. God says, on your own for a while now. You've been trying to solve all your problems on your own for a while now. Do you trust me? That's really what salvation is. Salvation is saying, I can't get to God on my own, but I'm going to trust God. If you'd like to talk to someone here in the auditorium about trusting God for salvation, at the end of the service, you grab one of these blue bags. We've got some various locations around the gym. If you grab a blue bag, somebody that's trained will take about 7 to 10 minutes, unpack the bag with you, and show you how to have a relationship with Christ. If you have a relationship, we want you to get baptized. And by the way, if you're online and you'd like to know about having a relationship with Christ, you can look up this website, or you can just email me, steve@spoutsprings.org. We'll talk to you how to have that relationship. Next thing up is baptism, to announce that you're a follower of Christ. If you'd like to do that, let us know. If you'd like to plug in and help work with this church to become who God created you to be, just let us know at steve@spoutsprings.org. Well, there's really two ways to do it. One way is for those of you who are learners. In the learning group, you want to talk first. So we have an orientation chat with me or one of the elders or staff, and we go through your history, your spiritual history. We go through our church's history and then how we can work together to do things that matter. And if you're a doer, join a ministry. Yeah, just jump in, just get to the edge of the pool, dive in, and start working with First Impressions, or children's ministry, or what's the other big one? First Impressions, whatever. Tech wouldn't mind having you. And by the way, if you want to know how to sign up for a ministry, find somebody who's doing it and ask them. I could give you 37 emails who to contact. Find somebody who's doing it. If you want to work in First Impressions, you want to work in children's ministry, you want to work in tech, find somebody over there who's taking care of your kid and say, I'd like to work in children's ministry. They'll figure it out. So if you want to, you can either do the conversation path or the just do it path. Either one works for us, okay? If the message has spoken to you in some way and you'd really like to talk to pray about it, there's a cross in the corner during this next song. If you're here in the auditorium, you can just slide over there. You can take communion on the way. If you want to take communion and don't want to go there, there's a communion station over there as well. If you're online, I say this a lot. If God's speaking, don't run away. Stay. Listen. Process. Okay? All right. Can I pray for us? Father, thank you that you are there in our problems. Thank you that you were there working before our problems. Thank you that you love us through our problems. Father, you want to make us into the image of Jesus Christ. Help me to cooperate. And Father, some of the problems that are faced in our church a lot have to do with the military and the challenges that are part of that, the constantly changing world that we live in, the threats that come up. I pray for all our military that you keep them peaceful. For the ones that are deployed, keep them safe and bring them home soon. And Father, help us to live for your glory, that you will show yourself to us, and that we will trust you so that you can transform us into the image of Jesus. And it's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.